When we think about medical devices, things like catheters or stents or heart valves, we're putting an incredible amount of trust in them. They're designed to save lives. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when the very thing meant to heal you ends up harming you? Well, the stakes are unbelievably high, and it all comes down to this kind of hidden world of medical safety engineering. So let's pull back the curtain and see what's really going on behind the scenes to keep us safe. Now, you'd probably think that most device failures happen on the factory floor, right? Like a simple mistake during assembly. But the data tells a completely different story. Just look at this. More than half of all FDA recalls, especially the really serious ones, don't come from a slip-up in manufacturing. No, they happen because of a flaw in the original blueprint, a gap in the design process itself.
And we're not talking about minor glitches here. For something like a catheter, a design flaw can be absolutely catastrophic. Think about it. A catheter tip could just detach and be left floating in a patient's bloodstream. A balloon that's supposed to open an artery might not deflate, completely blocking blood flow. An inner part could just separate, meaning you'd need another surgery to get it out. These are very real failures with life-or-death consequences.
So that begs the big question, right? When the stakes are this high, you can't just cross your fingers and hope for the best. There has to be a system. How in the world do engineers hunt down and get rid of these potential risks before a device even gets close to a patient? Well, the answer is a really rigorous two-part strategy. That's basically the backbone of all medical device development. It's all about design controls and proactive risk management. This is the official blueprint for building safety into a device right from the very first sketch on a napkin. So let's start with the official rulebook. The FDA's design controls. These aren't just suggestions. They are the law. And as you can see, this isn't some loose set of best practices. It's a required systematic framework. And the whole point is to make sure that the final device is not only safe, but that it actually does what the doctors and patients you depend on it need it to. And this whole thing is a journey, not just a single step. It all starts with super careful planning. Then, you've got to define the user needs. What does this device really have to do? From there, those needs get translated into concrete engineering specs, what they call design outputs. And at every single stage, there are these tough reviews and a whole battery of tests to verify and validate the design. It's all about making sure everything is perfect before that final blueprint gets sent off for manufacturing.
But here's the most important part. This isn't just about mindlessly checking off boxes on a form. The entire process, the whole thing, is built on a mindset, a philosophy really, of proactive risk management. It's about constantly asking what could possibly go wrong here, and more importantly, how do we stop it from ever happening?
And what's so interesting here is how the FDA itself talks about this. They lay out the whole purpose of risk analysis. It's all about being proactive. You identify every possible hazard, even things like a surgeon using it wrong. Then you calculate the risks, and then you engineer ways to bring those risks way, way down to an acceptable level. It's this constant loop of finding and fixing. Okay, so to actually do this, engineers have some pretty specific tools. One of the most common is called an FMEA, which stands for Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. The best way to think about it is like a pre-mortem. It's basically a structured brainstorming session where engineers get to play detective. They imagine every single way a device could fail. The balloon could rupture, the tip could break off, you name it. Then for each potential failure, they trace out the ripple effects. What would the consequences be for the patient? It's all about finding the problem before it has any chance to become one. But, just identifying the risks, that's only step one. Proving you've actually controlled them is a whole different ballgame. And that brings us to two of the most critical, and honestly most often confused ideas in device testing: verification and validation. Think about it this way. How do you actually prove that you not only built the device exactly to its specifications, but also that you built the right device in the first place? The one that's actually going to solve the real clinical problem. Those are two very, very different questions. And the FDA has this just brilliant way of explaining the difference. It's so simple, but so powerful. Verification is asking, did I make the product correctly? Validation, on the other hand, is asking, did I make the correct product? It's a small difference in words, but a huge difference in meaning. Let's make this super concrete. Verification. That's all the testing you do in the lab. We're going to run a tensile strength test to see if the catheter breaks. We're going to do a burst pressure test on the balloon. It's black and white. It either passes or it fails. These tests directly answer those risks we identified earlier. Validation, though, that's when you put the device into the hands of a doctor for a simulated use test. Can they actually steer it through a model of an artery? Is it easy to use? Does it actually do the job it was meant for? But hang on, because it gets even a little deeper than that. To get proof you can rely on, your tests have to be reliable too. This is something called test method validation. You literally have to prove that your measurement equipment and your test procedures are accurate and consistent. I mean, if your test for measuring a catheter's diameter gives you a different number every time you run it, that test is totally useless, right?
So after all this planning, all this risk analysis, and all of this testing, where does all that proof go? Well, it's all carefully collected into what's called the Design History File, or DHF. And you shouldn't think of it as some dusty old archive. It's a living, breathing safety record.
The DHF is basically the official biography of the device. It's got every single record, from the very first user needs and risk analyses, all the way to every last verification and validation test report. It tells the complete story of how that device was designed and, most importantly, how it was proven to be safe.
And this right here is such a key idea. As this quote points out, risk management isn't something you do once and then forget about. It's a living process. So as new information comes in, even years after the device is on the market, the risk files and the DHF are constantly being updated. It's truly a cradle-to-grave record of that device's safety.
So what's the bottom line here? The real power of the DHF is traceability. If a problem ever pops up, regulators and engineers can go right back into this file and see exactly why a certain decision was made, what the test results were, and how a specific risk was handled. It creates this perfect unbroken chain of evidence, which means there's complete accountability.
And all this brings us to one last really important thought. This whole system, it was built for a world of mechanical engineering and material science. But today, devices are getting smarter. They've got complex software, artificial intelligence. So the fundamental question we all have to start asking is this: is this incredibly rigorous process that's worked so well, is it still going to be enough to guarantee our safety in the future? And that is a huge challenge for the next generation of medical engineering.